watching and reviewing every single episode of One Piece, so if you're interested, make sure to follow. In this episode, Crocodile reveals his identity finally to the numbered members of the Baroque Works, and I think Luffy might have just completely shifted Vivi's perspective on everything. So firstly, let's talk about that meeting with Crocodile and the members of the Baroque Works. I mean, it was so intense. Crocodile, this is the first time we've seen him just talk, basically, for an extended period of time with anybody that isn't Miss All Sunday, and the dude's so intense. He's terrifying. The way he speaks and just his demeanor and the way he looks, he's just a really intimidating dude. He's not somebody you would want to piss off. Do you know what I mean? He reveals the final and ultimate goal of the Baroque Works, and that is Project Utopia. Now, we don't exactly get all of the details, but there seems to be something actually in Alabasta that Crocodile is interested in getting. He wants to destroy Alabasta from the inside out, essentially, let them destroy themselves almost. He's caused all this chaos with, you know, stopping all of the rain and manipulating its people, its citizens. So he's going to let them all basically kill themselves, and then he's going to take it over, and he's going to take something from Alabasta that's you know, worth doing all of this sort of stuff. I have no idea what this thing might be, but I can only assume it will be something that gives Crocodile infinitely more power, because that's what this dude cares about. Power, control, they're his main motivating factors, clearly. I don't even think Alabasta as a whole is that relevant for Crocodile. It's essentially just a consequence of his ultimate goal, which is this Project Utopia and this thing that he wants to collect from it. What was quite interesting was the reaction of the numbered members of the Baroque Works when they actually found out that Crocodile was the leader. Of course, they know who Crocodile is due to the fact he's one of the 7 warlords. You know, he's very notorious, but the fact that he's the boss of the Baroque Works, I think, threw them all off guard. In fact, I can't remember, one of them said, there's a pirate leading us, and they didn't even know that. Obviously, they had no details at all. And it's interesting to see what these people will do for a bit of power, a bit of like a higher standing in this utopia that Crocodile has promised them. They're willing to follow somebody who they don't even know. They know nothing about, no details, just for just a chance of being in this higher standing of this utopia, or this country that doesn't even exist yet. Do you know what I mean? But Crocodile showed how actually terrifying he is when Mr. 3 showed up and declared that he hadn't taken out any of the Straw Hats or Vivi or anything like that. And Crocodile obviously thought he had, because he had spoken to Sanji over the phone, which also got revealed, and Crocodile was pissed, and he grabs Mr. 3 by the throat and he completely dehydrates him. I think he basically essentially gets rid of all of the water in his body. I don't know exactly what it is, but he completely sucks the life out of him. And I guess that's one of Crocodile's powers. It's absolutely terrifying. And then he feeds him to a giant crocodile. Like, he does not give a fuck. Like, this crocodile dude he's a maniac. Do you know what I mean? He's scary, but he's also extremely cold and calculated and very smart. Everything that he's been doing up to this point with the Baroque Works has been leading to this Project Utopia. Every single mission, every single task has been leading towards this thing that Crocodile wants to achieve in Alabasta. Crocodile also now knows the identities of all the Straw Hat Pirates, also that Vivi is with them due to Mr. 2. So now Crocodile has a target. He knows exactly who he's going to aim for, and the Straw Hats are going to have an even bigger target on their back, you know, from Baroque Works, from the numbered members, from Crocodile himself. They really got to watch their backs now. They got to be careful, because they're outnumbered absolutely massively. But given what we know about the Straw Hats, that being outnumbered doesn't really mean too much. But, you know, there's a limit, I'm sure. But regardless, now Crocodile knows exactly who he's targeting, exactly where Vivi is. And, yeah, things just got a lot more dangerous. But speaking of the Straw Hats, the other part of this episode, which I thought was really powerful, was the massive argument between Luffy and Vivi. It actually got physical because of how intense the argument was. But I think Luffy has slightly changed Vivi's perspective on things. As we know, Vivi's plan is to speak to Koza and stop the rebel army from attacking, to stop the war, stop millions of lives potentially being lost, and essentially to save Alabasta in a more peaceful way. But Luffy points out how potentially unrealistic this is. He says that people do die, and why is she the one risking her life for other people? Why is that fair? Why does everybody else get to live when she potentially is putting her life on the line? And Vivi obviously loses her mind, because all she wants is peace. She's been struggling so much. You know, all of her friends, the citizens of her kingdom, are all under this insane stress, dying, all at the hands of Crocodile, all out of her control, essentially. And all she wants is peace. She wants people alive. And Luffy points out that that's unrealistic without consequence, without fighting, without deaths. And I think it sort of breaks something in Vivi, But as we know, Luffy is a very smart guy, and he's just honest. Do you know what I mean? But Luffy's main point was that why should Vivi be able to put her life on the line, but the Straw Hats can't? Because as we know, Luffy wants to go directly to Crocodile and beat him up. He believes that's the best resolution for all of this. Basically get rid of the root cause, and that is Crocodile. Luffy is saying in this moment, please rely on us. We're supposed to be friends. Don't just risk your own life. Let us risk ours too. And, it makes Vivi break down in tears. I think this shows how powerful Luffy is as a character, not just physically, obviously, but the fact he's able to move people like this, how he's able to get people on his side to believe in him and the Straw Hats. And, even when there's so much on the line for Vivi, basically everything on the line for her, she's willing to put her faith in Luffy because, he's so convincing and he's so passionate, and he's genuine. Do you know what I mean? He doesn't lie, and he's honest. Do you know what I mean? Overall, I thought this scene was really powerful. It really showed Vivi's character, how she's so sweet and kind-hearted, and she cares so much about other people, but she was willing to get physically violent with Luffy over the idea that these people had no choice but to die. Even if they were to execute her plan or whatever, there were going to be people that die, and that upset her to the point where she physically got violent with Luffy. And of course, it also says a lot about Luffy as well, the way he was able to talk to her and get her on his side and get her to believe in him. It was a really good scene. Also, shout out to Toto as well. I thought his whole situation was absolutely heartbreaking, but the scene where him and Luffy are digging holes together, and he manages to find a little bit of water and he extracts it and he gives it to Luffy, because they're basically the last glimmer of hope for Alabasta. At least that's what it looks like, and I think Toto sort of recognizes that. So even though this old man is like withered away, essentially, he's still willing to give this last bit of water that he found to Luffy and the Straw Hats in order to let them continue with their plan, potentially stop the rebel army, stop Crocodile, whatever it is they want to do. But, I really hope Toto manages to survive, or, that his city of Yuba comes back once this is all gone. I hope we get to see more of him. I'm sure we will, because this guy has been through a hell of a lot as well. The citizens of Alabasta are the ones that are suffering the most through all of this. Yeah, overall, this episode was really great, and things are really coming to a head now in Alabasta. So let's see what happens.